William, thank you very much for joining us today, Mr. Longrigg. Before talking about your role in the International Academy of Family Lawyers, we would be really grateful if you could just share with us a brief resume of your career.
Well, in a funny sort of a way, there's not very much to say because, well, I decided to be a lawyer when I was quite young, having done some work experience with a friend, and then I joined what was then Charles Russell in 1985 as an article clerk.
Which we don't have anymore.
Which trainees were called in those days. So that was 1985, September, and slightly embarrassing, I've been there ever since. So that's 30, exactly.
I had my 25th anniversary yesterday.
Well, you're catching up.
Yeah.
So it's like 37 and a half years now, which seems a bit ridiculous. So I joined the family team because that seemed like the most interesting team, and I have absolutely no regrets because I really enjoy being a family lawyer. And in fact, I enjoy it so much that my daughter has become a family lawyer.
Amazing.
Which is kind of flattering in a way, kind of scary in another way. But I've really enjoyed working with a fantastic team at what is now Charles Russell Speechlys. And really that's my career. And I can't, that's why I say it's not particularly eventful.
Awesome. Have you got any highlights or any things that stick out in your memory or any funny stories?
Well, there are certain, I mean, you know, the thing about a career like this is that you have certain cases where you've changed the law, where you've gone to the Court of Appeal and it's been a really fantastic outcome. So those sort of moments professionally have been absolutely fantastic. What I found over the years is that it's very good to have some sort of variety in the work that one does. So initially I was involved with Resolution, which was then of course the Solicitors Family Law Association, and I became chair of the London region of that. And I did find that doing something which was outside the day-to-day client work was absolutely vital. I mean, you probably find with all the management jobs that you do within the firm, and now all the things that you're doing with IAFL make a big difference.
Keep the balance, keep our mental stability.
Exactly. And so I have found that really valuable just in terms of having that different well, professional balance, if you like, and all those different things to do. But also the world of family law is a really interesting world. And that's I've discussed this with my daughter as well, now that she's a family lawyer, and that it is a great world to work in because a lot of people become genuine friends. And of course, in the IAFL, you have genuine, really good friends from around the world, as well as local friends. And that just makes an enormous difference to one's working life. And, you know, along with the sort of various other professional highlights. I mean, this, you know, obviously becoming a partner is a bit of a highlight. Having various management roles is a bit of a highlight. Recruiting fantastic people to the firm. But holistically, it's, you know, there's a lot of interest there and there's a lot of very positive stuff.
And the world has changed so much since 1985 as well, that what we see coming through the doors changes every decade.
Completely. I mean, I just think about, well, first of all, things like the number of prenups we do now compared with the number of prenups I did in, say, 1987. I mean, there were no prenups, they did not exist. But the international work is quite extraordinary because London has changed very much as a sort of international centre since 1985 when I started. And it's so often the case that the person walking through the door has some real international element to their case, which makes it incredibly interesting. And I think it's the sort of intellectual challenge which has grown over the decades. I was going to say years, but it is decades.
I sometimes think that our work is a bit like an exam question every day.
Completely agree. I mean, even just yesterday, I was talking to one of my associates and I was saying, was this, this and this? And he said to me, you know, this is exactly like an exam question. I said, yeah, how often does this happen? Really often, which makes it incredibly interesting.
Looking back, what are the top tips you would give to young family lawyers now?
Well, first of all, to young lawyers, I would say specialise in family law if you feel that you have an interest in it, because it's a fascinating area. And I don't think very many people regret it, quite frankly, because it is just full of interest and it's constantly changing. I would say it's important to try to become part of the family law world. So join committees, get yourself known to your peers, make sure that you get to know your contemporaries. If you're invited to a party, go to it. If you're invited to some seminar, go to it, because that's a really good way of mixing with other people. Part of the great pleasure for me has been mixing in that world. So apart from the obvious things like work hard, make sure that you've really got the detail down to a T and so on, which is kind of obvious for any lawyer, really.
Yeah.
The advice I would give is become integrated into the family law world, because you'll find that it's really an enormous benefit to you. And as far as the International Academy of Family Lawyers is concerned, you've got to be 10 years qualified. You've got to be, if you like, in the right position to be elected. It's not easy, but I think that's something really good for many lawyers to aim for. And also there are various mini meetings that we organise which are designed for people who are not fellows of the IAFL, which are really good to go to. So try to talk to your firms about being able to go to these meetings, which are specifically designed for young lawyers, particularly the European meeting, which is annual, which of course you were heavily involved with for a while. Well, I invented them and you then ran them.
And I executed them for you.
So put together, actually, I think we've done a pretty good job. Shouldn't sound too smug, but you know, there we are.
In terms of you looking back over your career, is there anything, any advice you would give William of 1985?
Golly, yeah, I'm sure there is masses of advice. I think that I used to get kind of quite bogged down with certain aspects of cases. It was quite different in those days. You know, we didn't have the FORME, we didn't have the systems that exist now. And I think that there was a bit of a tendency in 1985 to run cases in a way that, looking back, was really quite inefficient. These incredibly long discursive affidavits, documents, just collecting thousands of pages of documents that didn't have relevance. Looking back now and looking at what we're doing now, I really could have taken this by the scruff of the neck and actually changed it myself, rather than kind of going with the flow. So I look back at that and think about, you know, I could have actually had a bit more influence over that. Apart from that, I suppose I probably could have been more involved in the wider firm in terms of management and in terms of becoming involved. Obviously in 1985, I was too junior, but looking forwards, I perhaps could have been a bit less insular in terms of the family team and just thought a bit more widely. But apart from that, I sort of gone with the flow a bit.
Hasn't worked too badly.
Well, but a lot of people move firms, and sometimes I think it's a good thing for people to move firms. And the reason that I didn't ever move firms was that I think for family law, there are certain firms that are really good. And obviously, who knows, I could have come to your firm. But there weren't very many places that I could have gone that would have, shall we say, been any better or offered me any more, although I could have offered, in a way, any more too. But I think for a lot of people at the beginning of their career, they do need to think, is this the right place for me? And I know that some of our people who have often left for really quite good reasons. Not because we didn't like them and we didn't support them, because we pretty much always did, but because sometimes they want to have a different environment. For example, people might leave to go to a smaller firm. We're a big firm now, we're more than 1,000 people. Not everybody wants to work in that kind of environment. Some people want to go and work with their mates and just say, look, this is like a sort of relatively small family. and that's how I want to work, and I want to bring my dog in every day, and I want to, be much more flexible. That is completely understandable. So ask yourself when you're young, what do you want? What's right for me? And, this was right for me, but something else could easily be appropriate for somebody else.
It follows on very nicely with my next question. Family law is a big hot topic at the minute. Well-being for lawyers generally, but well-being especially for family lawyers. How have you managed to achieve the elusive work-life balance, or have you constantly worked on it? Have you got thoughts that you can share with the fellows on how we might achieve that?
Well, you're quite right to bring it up. Having said earlier on in this conversation that, not very many people regret going into family law, I do know one or two people who have found it too stressful, too much of a struggle, and emotionally too draining. And so that they have left private practice, usually to go into some other family law related area. And that's partly just because it can get on top of you. I don't think I've necessarily achieved a fantastic balance myself. And I look at the early days and I look at the hours that I worked, and I just remember going on holiday with my children and then coming back and thinking, God, I really miss them, because I was so many hours in the office that I just
and of
saw
course, in
so
the early
little
days,
of
we
them.
didn't have laptops and
We didn't
mobile
have laptops.
phones
There wasn't. But really, COVID has changed things dramatically. And I know that, with us, sort of had agile working. We had agile working, but not as much as you did before lockdown, before COVID. Things have changed. So for my daughter's generation, there will be several days, 2 or 3 days, probably in the week, where you'll be able to work at home. Now, I think that is actually a big plus. I don't see any fall in production from our associates and partners, indeed, who work from home, because I ring them on WebEx, there they are, sitting at their desks. I email them straight back to me. In fact, people argue it's more productive. This, I think, really does help with the work-life balance, because I know that I'd be getting back regularly 8, 9, 10, 11 at night. This was not unusual. And every day I had to get into the office, and it was, I don't live very far away, so it's not too much of a slog for me, but it was definitely an issue. Things have changed. And I think the fact that people can go home, work a bit more flexibly, work from home in the evenings, for example, after the kids have gone to bed, and all that kind of thing, even work on holiday. You can say, well, I'm going to have 10 days holiday. One of the days I'll be working all day. That's absolutely fine. You can do it from there, but you're still there, if you like, with the family. This is a big plus. This has made a huge difference, really.
I agree. So thank you for sharing your career memories. Let's turn now to the International Academy of Family Lawyers. How did you first get involved?
Well, my boss, Peter George, who is now deceased, who was a great man and a very, very well-known lawyer, was one of the founder members in 1986, which is very shortly after I joined the firm. And of course, I always was desperate to become part of it, partly because I've got a German wife, speak a bit of German, did French A-level, speak Italian because I spent a year in Italy. None of these languages, by the way, I speak particularly brilliantly, but nevertheless, in English terms, that counts me as a polyglot. And so I thought this is very appropriate for me. Also, obviously I like traveling, and I very much like mixing with people from different parts of the world. So I thought that would be great. So I think I applied probably twice before I think I was accepted on the 3rd time. Because in those days, it was really tough for the Brits, or certainly for the English, to get in, which is fine. And I know that lots of other people had a similar experience. So I joined in 2001, or at least 2001 was my first conference, which was in May, I think, in Prague. And then essentially I've been to virtually every other meeting organised by IAFL ever since. I missed a few of the US ones at the beginning, And then I became secretary of the European chapter and so on. And so my firm was incredibly generous and decent about me going to it, because they knew that I enjoyed it. They also knew that I was benefiting the firm as well, of course, from meeting a lot of overseas lawyers and bring quite a bit of work in, so they could see that that was useful. And sort of the rest is history in a way.
So talk to me, because I know that you had 2 hats as a president. So talk me through.
Well, first
the
of all,
European chapter
Richard
president.
Sachs, who was a very high-profile lawyer, I was friendly with him, and he said, "Look, can you be secretary treasurer of the European chapter?" I mean, this was probably, say, 2006, I think. So I hadn't really been part of it for all that long. And that was great. And my PA, Joanna, who's still my PA, who everybody knows, she helped a lot with that. Because in those days, we had a big book and we used to write all the expenses in it. And we wrote it in pencil because quite often we had to cross them out because we had to make changes. She did all that. And that was really good because it meant that I was a little bit more involved, first of all, with the European chapter. Then I became European chapter president. I think that was from 2010 to 12. In fact, your first meeting was my first meeting that I organised in Strasbourg, wasn't it?
Exactly. It was an absolute pleasure to be at that meeting.
I really enjoyed that meeting. Well, I enjoy all the meetings, but I mean, even though it was a bit stressful organising. In fact, I had helped Harula Constantinidou from Athens. Joanna and I had helped her a lot with her Thessaloniki meeting, which was before that. So we had quite a lot of involvement with that meeting. But then the one that we'd organised from scratch was the Strasbourg one, and actually people were surprised because Strasbourg is the most beautiful place. And people didn't really know it, so that was great.
It was also, I think, the first meeting where the first time fellows, we had green dots in those days. So that it was clear who it was their first conference, so that the fellows could be.
Well, I'd forgotten that was, but I think we did sort of probably bring in the buddy system then, didn't we? Yeah. So we had that meeting, which I suppose was in 2010, 11? No, that would have been 2011. You're right, because I had to spend a year organising it. But pretty 2011. Then 2012, I suspect, was the Crete meeting, which was a great meeting. We'd actually organised to have the meeting in Athens. And then, of course, this was at the time when there were massive riots, slap next door to the hotel, which was next door to the Parliament building. And so luckily it was 5 months or something in advance. So we thought, this is crazy, we can't do this. And the Americans in particular were really nervous about going to Athens. So we changed it to Crete. And I was able to use the same agents that I've been involved with. And actually Crete turned out to be a massive success. And the hotel was superb, and it was at a resort hotel at Agios Nikolaos, and really it was fun, and that was a great pleasure too. Although it was, I mean, these things are always nerve-wracking because it was in April, I think, and one was worried about the weather and everything was outside.
But the president's dinner on beside the sea was fantastic.
That was great, with a boat trip to get there. But we did need a lot of outside heating and fleeces towards the end of the evening. But also, we were quite keen to bring in dancing and things like that, because I think that for quite a long time, the IAFL dinners had been a little bit more staid than they are now. And then, of course, many more young people became IAFL fellows. And particularly in the European chapter, of course, which made a big difference. So there was a much more sort of party atmosphere than in the early days, when it was seen as a sort of rather elite travel club. And it's changed so dramatically. So even since I joined in 2001. So, I mean, Crete was fun. Well, they all are.
And then tell me what happens when you finish as European
So that's when I was
president.
European chapter president. Then I was secretary of IAFL. It seems like a very long time, because you're secretary now, aren't you? So But I was secretary, and then they wanted me to be president. So I say they, I mean, you know, you sort of, I suppose I got a tap on the shoulder and spoke to my colleagues, and I said, yeah, that sounds okay. And I'm really glad that I was, because although it was a massive amount of work, I did have Joanna, my PA,
By your side.
by my side, which was really necessary. But in those days, you had quite a good lead-in. Well, that was 2 years of really a lot of work, because the team was Donna Goddard, then, who was fantastic. The team was quite small in terms of the paid administrative team.
Yeah.
So we had to do a lot of the work. And it was not just organising the conferences, it's a massive amount of other work. For example, bringing in the European meetings for young lawyers, and quite a lot of other initiatives, student schemes, and everything else that comes with, if you like, an organisation that is finding new initiatives the whole time and growing. But there was such fantastic people on it. I was really helped a lot as president, because Cheryl Hepfer was the president before me, and she essentially brought me in as her assistant, really. So she showed me the ropes, and she gave me an enormous opportunity to help her on quite a lot of issues that she was dealing with, and initiatives that she had. And she really made, if you like, a bit of a leap herself in terms of what IAFL was doing. She brought in the mini meetings. We had a mini meeting in Budapest, which was really successful for bringing in Eastern Europeans, and she was very good at that. So I helped her with all of that, which meant that I kind of hit the ground running, or was able to hit the ground running, thanks to her, when I became president in 2014, I suppose it was. And we actually, because it was quite complicated, because we'd organised, or she'd organised, an AGM, a meeting in Jerusalem.
That's right.
And it was a time of particular tension in Israel, and in particular in Jerusalem. And so it had to be cancelled 5 weeks.
It was very tight.
It was very tight. And Cheryl had a bad back at the time. She couldn't travel. So she said to me, would you mind awfully? And we'd just done this mini meeting in Budapest. So I jumped on a plane, went to Budapest, and, you know, had a sort of a day and a half with the local agents there, looking at venues and organising it. And I came back, and she was very grateful to me. But I said, Cheryl, it's really not very onerous going to Budapest for a day and a half, eating about 8 different meals, with, you know, very nice people, and then coming back. It's quite a lot better than work. So you don't need to thank me. Anyway, that was quite an experience, organising a conference with 5 weeks' notice, when normally we have literally 3 years. So it was very interesting being president, and
Where were your conferences?
Well, so the first one, slightly selfishly, I thought, well, I'd like to have conferences in places that I've always wanted to go, but I've never been. So the first one was in Sicily, at the San Domenico Hotel in Taormina, which was great, except that there was this terrible storm on the first day of the conference.
Landslide, if I remember correctly.
And the landslide. So Taormina is a very old, very beautiful town with a lovely Greek theatre, and then it's above the sea, but there's a cable car leading down to the beach. Anyway, there was a landslide because of the rain, which was the worst rain they'd had for 50 years. Cars and lorries were floating out to sea as a result of this storm. So there was a landslide over the cable car, so we couldn't. Well, obviously you could get down to the beach by road, but it was a very long route.
Or many steps, if I remember correctly.
Many steps. And then we had to cancel the event on the beach. We had to cancel the afternoon tour, because this was all on the Wednesday when everybody was arriving. Luckily, by the time of the welcome reception on the Wednesday evening, which was in the gardens of the hotel, the rain had cleared. But, you know, people were a bit traumatized.
I remember rooms being underwater.
A lot of people turned up at the hotel. I mean, the hotel was a 15th century monastery. It's not built for that sort of rain. People turned up and they said, I'm sorry, we've got to find other rooms for you because your room's flooded. And when we had a meeting for the exec on the Wednesday morning, and there were buckets all around the room, and there was quite a lot of water on the floor, because what can you do? So this was a bit worrying, and I did go with the agents onto the beach to check out the restaurant on that Wednesday morning, and we got caught in the rain, and it was biblical.
Yeah.
So that was a little bit scary, but apart from that, everything went really well, and so we were very, very lucky. Actually, dinner on the last night we had at the villa that had been used in The Godfather film, where Apollonia was blown up in the car, and so in the courtyard of the villa we had tables outside. It was fantastic.
I should have stayed. I went to him on the Saturday evening.
And the thing was that we had Al Pacino himself giving us a spiel saying, well, the International Academy of Matrimonial Lawyers, as we were called. And this was because one of our fellows had acted for him in his divorce, so we managed to get a video of him, which was great. And that was a stellar evening, I must say. And then the second conference, again, I'd never been to India. I'd always wanted to go. So we organised it in New Delhi at the Imperial Hotel, which was really amazing. And it was very interesting because a lot of people were saying to me, I don't want to go to India. I really have never wanted to go to India. And they went. And everybody who went found it fascinating, and they loved it. Many people have been there since.
Brilliant.
And some of them they said to me, well, okay, if you're organising it, I imagine it'll be okay. And it was more than okay. It was completely fascinating and just a great meeting. But the thing about IAFL is, although the meetings are phenomenal, it's not just about meetings, it's about all the other things that we do.
Yeah. Tell me some of the particular highlights of your presidency.
Well,
too many to say.
The highlights of my presidency. I mean, there was obviously there were issues that arose. For example, I spearheaded the change of name from the International Academy of Matrimonial Lawyers to the International Academy of Family Lawyers. And there was a bit of controversy about this, but one of the reasons that I've done it is that everybody who founded IAFL from around the world, they were really, to a very large extent, money practitioners, mostly what you might call big money cases, particularly in England and the US. That was the sort of work that they primarily did, which particularly in the US was referred to as matrimonial. And of course, there's the US organization called the American Academy of Matrimonial Lawyers, which we grew out of. So understandably, we were the International Academy of Matrimonial Lawyers. But we had so many fellows who were coming in, people like Anne-Marie Hutchinson and so on, who didn't do any money work, just did children work. We have people doing adoption work and so on. And it seemed to me and to others that this was becoming inaccurate, a bit of a misnomer to call ourselves matrimonial lawyers. Also it's certainly among people in mainland Europe and in other non-English speaking countries. Again, it just seems so specific and away from family law.
And as we said earlier, the world was changing, and
Well, it's changing.
The definition of the family as well,
Exactly.
that time had changed as well.
Exactly. And so we were talking about all sorts of things, forced marriage and so on. And so matrimonial increasingly became a misnomer. So we spearheaded that, and there was quite a lot of controversy about that, which culminated in a Board of Governors meeting at the AGM in Sicily, which was quite a difficult moment because there were people who were really vociferous against it, particularly some people from the US who felt that it was a brand that was very much recognized in the US, but also it was a brand that was coupled with the American Academy of Matrimonial Lawyers. So I could understand the reasoning, but I felt that it wasn't, I felt as though it was all me, it wasn't, but I did spearhead it, that the time had come. So I have no regrets about that, and I feel that that was an appropriate move. I also am incredibly pleased about the initiative of organising the meetings, not just in Europe, but around the world, for lawyers who are not fellows of the IAFL, but really for whom some training in the international aspects of family law was going to be incredibly useful, well, vital, in fact, but also was going to prepare them for future fellowship of IAFL. So we did quite a lot in the US, for example, in New York, which were incredibly well attended. But the ones in Europe, in wherever we hold them, although in a funny sort of a way, they've become less relevant for the fellows in the various jurisdictions in Britain, still very popular with the Brits. They are so popular and so well attended. We just had one in Ibiza, and of course we've had one in Madrid, Berlin, Milan, and Warsaw. And they've just become so good because it means that people are able to have a taste of what it's like to be among the...
And short and sharp, so that...
Short and sharp, not expensive.
Yeah, exactly.
So we don't go to grand hotels. The education program is always really interesting and packed, and people really turn up to it. Well, I don't know whether they did the last one in Ibiza, but maybe
that's ridiculous.
Most of them did. And so I'm really pleased with those because they grew out of the fact, I mean, I used to go to the conference organised in Trier at the ERA, which is the Europäische Rechtsakademie, essentially the European Academy of Law. And they ran a fabulous conference every September on family law, into European aspects of family law. And I used to go, but I felt that a lot of that was for lawmakers and academics and so on.
Not for practitioners.
So really wanted one that was for practitioners and practical, but also taught people about, you know, these very complex areas of EU law. And it grew out of that because people needed to know the basics. And indeed, that's what those conferences do. I mean, the last one in Ibiza was very good because we actually heard from a lot of people from jurisdictions, you know, whether it's Estonia, Albania, and so on, who came and talked about family law in those jurisdictions. Really interesting. And people from outside Europe come to those conferences too. We have people from the US, people from New Zealand, people from Australia. It was great.
Fantastic.
So I'm actually particularly pleased with that.
Great initiative, and I'm sure it will continue for many years to come. So the organisation continues to grow. Our aim is to get to 1,000 fellows. As we're nearly there. Give me 3 reasons, if you were pitching us as an organisation, 3 reasons why someone who's up and coming through the family law ranks globally would want to come and join us.
Well, first of all, it is the camaraderie and the friendships that you make, and frankly, for me, I have to say, that's the most important thing, because I just feel that it's life enhancing to get to know so many, mostly like-minded people from different parts of the world. It's fascinating, and it's just great to make those friendships. So, you know, you might say, well, that's a bit superficial because it's not really, but that is just number one. So I'd say, do it because it's fun, the travel is great, and so on. The second thing is that it is actually a really useful source of work. You get referrals, and people from around the world who you get to know pretty well are going to say, well, I'd like so-and-so to help me with this particular element of this particular case, which means it's good for your firm, it's good for your billing, but also it's really interesting because the more international work you do, frankly, the more interesting it is, as we know. So it's really good from that practical point of view. But thirdly, without wishing to sound too sort of sanctimonious, you're making a difference. It gives you the ability to make more of a difference, to have an influence over family law throughout the world. Increasingly, IAFL is becoming an organisation which influences law making. And the strategy meeting that we're going to be having in a few days' time in Venice is going to be talking about how we can increase our role, essentially as a lobbying organisation, a real organisation of influence. Now, we've done quite a lot of that, particularly intervening, exactly. with Ed Friedman's Amicus Committee, which has done a fantastic job of intervening in Supreme Court proceedings and so on, and producing papers and producing opinions which can be used for the benefit of various lawmakers in various cases throughout the world. We are in a unique position to do this because our family lawyers and our fellows are able to provide information about their own jurisdiction and their own experiences. And we want to take advantage of that in a very positive way. And that's, that's something that I would use to sell to people who we want to make a difference in the world, but we also want to have fun doing it. So this is an ideal opportunity.
Do you have a vision for the future of the IAFL?
Well, that's part of my vision, is to make IAFL the influential body in terms of international family law. That's my vision for IAFL. It's the go-to organisation and should be absolutely the go-to organisation. My vision is that it becomes a bit more of a household name than it is now, and that the bar associations throughout the world will have heard of IAFL and will have known of the work that we do and the influence that we have. So my vision is that we will be a larger organisation with probably a bit more money so that we can, if you like, more easily provide our, if you like, our lobbying and the support for lawmakers throughout the world. I see that we will have more fellows who are lawmakers as well as practitioners, whether they be judges, civil servants, or academics. We already have associate fellows, of course, who are judicial fellows, and then we have lawmakers and academics who are associate fellows. And I think that they should have a larger role within the organisation in order to assist our role as a lawmaking go-to influential body. So that's my vision. And I have to say that the younger people in particular who are coming through, they're so enthusiastic about it, and they're just there, hungry for the tasks that we're going to give them and that we set them. And it's very, very positive. And lots of people want to be fellows. And the ones who are fellows are really enjoying it.
Fabulous. Thank you very much. Before we finish, you've talked a lot about work and you've talked a lot about the IAFL, which is brilliant. What does William like to do in his spare time?
Me?
Yes.
Well, I quite like entertaining and cooking. In fact, So I like to, well, obviously I like traveling quite a lot. I very much like spending time with family. Seem to have done rather a lot of it recently. And so I like cooking, I like entertaining. I'm an avid reader and listener of audio books.
Excellent.
When I have a little bit more time, I'd like to go back to painting and drawing, which I did a lot of in
watercolors, oils.
Well, I do mainly drawings, but I want to get into acrylics.
Excellent.
I can't stand oils because they just take so long to dry, and I haven't got the patience. So that's a big plan. We have got a house where we like entertaining people and having people to stay. But I think, I've always said that what I really want to do is write a novel. And I did have a sabbatical in 2007. And I wrote the first 12 pages of
so
my
it's a work in
novel.
progress, huh?
And I have to say 7 of those 12 pages are really quite good. Rest of them need to be rewritten. But sadly, since 2007, I haven't taken, so to speak, pen to paper. But my wife says to me that I'm completely unsuited to being a writer because I don't really like spending time sitting on my own. And the same may be true for somebody who wants to do painting. My sister is a potter, married to a potter, and she runs pottery courses. And I did also think that I'd really like to learn how to throw pots properly and to glaze them and all that sort of thing. So that would be a really good fun thing to do. So but I'm not actually planning to retire anytime soon, or even to reduce my hours. So I'm not quite sure when
When
that's
you're
going to
gonna retire.
happen, but we'll have to see.
Brilliant. Thank you very much for joining me today. Thank you for sharing all
Thank
of your
you.
wisdom. I'm sure that everybody who's
About wisdom.
listening to this in the office or while they've been out walking, will very much enjoy it. And thank you for, on behalf of IAFL, thank you for everything that you've done. The one thing that we haven't mentioned, because William is too modest, is that he received his President's Medal a few weeks ago in Marrakesh. And I was there and I was absolutely delighted having
was a
been at your
really-
first conference to be there for that ceremony.
That was a really, I mean, you know, people might think of something like President's Medal of the IAFL, blah, 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 but actually it really did mean a lot to me. And I was surprised and really, really delighted, I have to say.
Very well deserved.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, William.
Thank you.